Okay, we're on page 67 in the Rav Friedlander's print. And we're now beginning today paragraph 80 for those who are following the paragraph system. Amar HaSeichel. The last paragraph we learned yesterday, 79, at the top of page 67. The Neshama said to the Seichel, I understand the idea that you have presented, that the guf is choshech, achor, dense and dark, and it comes from hastoras panim. The neshama is light, and it comes from ha'oras panim. I understand that. And not only are these two things, guf and neshama, created from two different things, they're hastoras panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ha'oras panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, this week's parsha, we have the words, V'anochi hastir astir panai. God says, I will hide my face. There's such a thing as a midah of hastoras panim. We should never know from hastoras panim. We should get out of the hastoras panim. Not only did God create man and truly the whole universe, either using hastoras panim or ha'oras panim, guf neshama, but that is how God runs the world, either hastoras panim or ha'oras panim. So when man looks at himself and understands that he's made up of guf, hastoras panim, neshama, ha'oras panim, he now also understands by looking at himself how God runs the world. God runs the world in a neshama type fashion, ha'oras panim, but God can run the world in a guf kind of fashion, which is hastoras panim. And we, as the Ramchal explained to us yesterday, decide how God will run the world. God reacts to what we do. If we act in a neshama way, which means ha'oras panim, he sends ha'oras panim. If Hashem, we act in guf way, and we overindulge in guf, so God runs the world in a guf way. The hastoras panim fashion. So now the Ramchal says, Amar HaSeichel. The Seichel now says, there's another thing I want to say to you, or it's more than say to you. He's saying it about the subject, but he's going to further clarify this is what we spoke about. Now remember, we've read 2 or 3 pages about this, but we've spent quite a few days on explaining it and re-explaining it and explaining it in different ways so that we get the concept. But the Ramchal wrote this in 2 pages. So now, although it may sound to someone that it's repetitious, what the Ramchal is doing is he's clarifying that which is in 2 pages, but we may have spent 2 weeks on. So it is not a repetition, it's just that we have explained it into the detail that we can. And now it's going to sound like he's saying the same thing, but he's not. He's trying to clarify a point that he's only spoken about for 1.5 pages or 2 pages, but for us it sounds like we've been talking about this for 2 weeks, which we have, because we're trying to get the concept clear. Amar HaSeichel, the Seichel says, I'm going to tell you something more about this. If we go and examine all the details about the neshama and the guf, we're going to be able to understand very clearly how all the details of the neshama and the guf and how they work, they all come from sources. The way the neshama works is from its source. The source is what creates the fruit. The root, the seed creates the root, creates the fruit. Now that we understand that the source is ha'oras panim, we're going to understand what the neshama can do and does. We understand, and the details of it. Once we understand that the guf comes from dense darkness, hastoras panim, we're going to understand the details about the guf. Each one of these things, the guf and the neshama, will end up operating according to its source material. And that will be a way for, be a good enough reason for you to understand how all these things work. Not only this, not only this, as we explained yesterday, the Ribono Shel Olam in a chesed shows us how he runs the world. He created us in a way that if we fully understand how we operate, guf and neshama, we will understand how God operates the world. Guf will result in this. Neshama will result in this. So just look at yourself, understand what you're made up of, understand how the guf functions, understand the details of the guf, understand how the neshama functions, understand the details of the neshama. You can understand how the details of how God runs the world. Therefore, we will find that not only does the guf come from this hastoras panim, the fact of the matter is, as he's going to explain, we won't see it today, but as he's going to explain, you're going to see what the result is. Because the guf comes from haster panim, it actually is going to reveal itself in the guf. The hastoras panim, which is the source of the guf, is going to be reflected in the guf. And the neshama is also a seer, sort of a picture of the hanhaga of ha'oras panim. Hudavar prati l'diyuknei shel ha'adam, shenema b'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu. We are a mirror, whatever the word selam in the mus means. We are in the image of God. Shemara b'tavnisai kol sidrei hamida shelo yisbarach. We now have an amazing understanding to what it means in the image of God. Now, God has no image, right? So when the pasuk says man is created b'tzelem Elokim in the image of God, you have to be careful how you read that pasuk. God has no image. So what does it mean to be in the image of God? It means for us the way that God runs the world. Man was created in the image by which God created the world. What's the image of the world? The image of the world is hastoras panim or ha'oras panim. Those are the two ways God runs the world. Those are the two roots. From hastoras panim, there are all kinds of yisurim chas v'sholom that can come out. From ha'oras panim, there's rachamim, chesed, all kinds of wonderful things that can come out. But those are the two roots of the way God runs the world. And man is fashioned in the image through which God created the world. B'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu, shemare b'tavnisai. Man shows in his form, in his tavnis, kol sidrei hamida shelo yisbarach. All the midas of the Ribono Shel Olam are built into man. And most importantly, these two basic midas, hastoras panim and ha'oras panim. Let's take a look at our Friedlander footnote 159. Kavonas habar yisbarach b'kach, sheshtei amidas ha'oras v'hester panim ahavas es hamakoyres l'tziris haneshama v'aguf. The Ribono Shel Olam's intention was that through the two midos, the two tools through which he runs the world, ha'oras panim and hester panim, that ha'oras panim and hester panim through which he uses the world should also be the two component parts through which man is made, guf and neshama. V'to amos umakbilos lahem, and they are analogous to them. Guf analogous to hastoras panim, neshama analogous to ha'oras panim. So when God runs the world in ha'oras panim, he's running it in a neshama way. La'aleinu hastoras panim, he's running in a guf way. So look at yourself, understand yourself. You'll understand that you're at Tzelem Elokim. You are created in the image by which God actually runs the world. Excuse me. Hoisagam came shemiproto haneshama, shemiprote haneshama v'aguf Ye'ef shalahavin estaken shtei amidas or elal kol prateim. The Rebbeinu Shalom wanted us to be able, and we spoke about this yesterday, Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to have some human understanding of how he's running the world. We shouldn't think that the world is chaotic. We shouldn't think that there's no pilot in the airplane, there's no captain on the ship. It's being run. We may not understand it because we're humans, but we need to get through to ourselves is there is a hanhaga, and one of the hanhagas is hastoras panim. One of the hanhagas is the Rebbeinu Shalom is quote unquote hiding from Klal Yisrael. He's hiding from the world, and then all kinds of things can lo aleinu happen. That's guf. The neshama is ha'aras panim. Excuse me. My chavrusa that I learned with at night told me last night that he saw Paneach Rosa. Paneach Rosa is a Rishon. And he wrote a pirush on the Torah. It's called Paneach Rosa, to reveal the secrets. And in this Sefer, he explains what Hastoras Panim means in this week's parasha. God says, I will hide my face from you. What does that mean? When God hides his face, the Torah says there'll be Loyalenu Yisurim. There'll be Chas v'shalom bad times. So the Paneach Raza gives a mashal. Says a king has to discipline the prince. He has the future king, and the future king hasn't lived up to being a future king. So the king has to administer some discipline to the prince. The king doesn't have it in his heart to do it. So the king calls the prince's tutor, private tutor, or whoever, and he says, listen, this and this was done by the prince, and he needs to be disciplined. I'm giving you the job. I need you to discipline him. But remember, he's the prince. I'm the king. And the king sort of maybe leaves the room or turns his head so he doesn't have to watch this. He doesn't have it, quote unquote, in his heart to watch the Yisurim. But he's given over the prince to the Yisurim so that he can be disciplined appropriately. But the king himself doesn't, quote unquote, have it in his heart to do it himself. So the Paneach Raza, who's a Rishon, it's a Rishon. So he says, this is a mashal of Hastir, Astir, Panai. The Rebbeinu Shalom lets certain kochas in the world loose. And it's as if the king is disciplining the prince, but he doesn't want to watch the actual disciplining. Of course, he's in charge of the disciplining, and he can stop the disciplining whenever he wants. But he's turned over this job of disciplining to somebody or something else because he doesn't want to do it himself. That's what the mashal is, and there's only a mashal of Paneach Raza. So this idea of Hastoras Panim, the Rebbeinu Shalom wants us to understand that the same way we have a guf that was created dense and dark. Dense and dark means you can't see what's going on. And there's the neshama, which is from ha'aras panim. It's light. You can see everything and understand things clearly. Darkness, density, I can't see, I don't understand, I'm confused. I think there's chaos here. I don't understand what's going on. I'm in utter darkness here. That's the chaos that the guf can bring into a person. The neshama says there's light here, that tzaddik be'emunasa yichye. God is running the show, even if you can't see it, because it's a time of hastoras panim where it's dark. Nevertheless, the Rebbeinu Shalom is here and he's running the world. So this is the two ways. You can either bring guf into your life or you can bring the neshama into your life. And the way that God created us is the way he runs the world. Rav Friedlander quotes a Gemara in footnote 160 that says that our neshama, Ramchal says that our neshama was created from ha'oras panim. It's a quote, Chelek Elikim Imhal. It's people like to call it a godly spark. Whatever it is ha'aras panim. It is a light from God, and that's a good place to be, because when things are lit, you can see them. When things are lit, you know what to do. When things are lit, you understand. When the light goes out, you're in utter confusion and you trip over everything. So everybody wants to be in a state of ha'aras panim. To be in a state of ha'aras panim, you have to press the button on the keypad that says, I am Mr. Neshama, not Mr. Guf. That's the first choice you have to make. So you can become the Neshama, and the Rebbeinu Shalom will treat you with ha'aras panim. It's a ha'aras panim from the Rebbeinu Shalom to your Neshama, that's ha'aras panim. So Rav Friedland points to a Gemara in Barachas, and Daf Yud. The Gemara says that David HaMelech wrote 5 kapitla Tehillim that say in it, Barchi Nafshi Es Hashem. One of the Barchi Nafshis is we say on Rosh Chodesh, as after the Shir Shel Yom, or some people say it as the Shir Shel Yom, we say Barchi Nafshi, but that's only one of 5 Barchi Nafshis. So the Gemara says, Keneged mi Amram David. David, who was he talking about when he said Barchi Nafshi 5 times? Lo Amram Ella Keneged HaKadosh Baruch Hu Keneged Neshama. The 5 Barchi Nafshis in Tehillim are to create an analogy between your Neshama and God. That's why it says Barchi Nafshi. My Neshama, my Nefesh, although the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva and other Rishonim distinguish between Nefesh and Neshama, they're not the same thing. But many times we say Nefesh, Neshama, we use it interchangeably. So Gemara says that David HaMelech said Barchi Nafshi 5 times because there's an analogy to be drawn between the Neshama and the Rebbeinu Shalom, and this analogy holds true for 5 facts. Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu Molei Kol HaOlam, the same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fills the entire universe, Af Neshama Maleya Es Kol HaGuf. So too the Neshama fills the entire body. Your eyeballs don't fill your entire body. Your brain doesn't fill your entire body. Your fingers don't fill your entire body. But your Neshama fills your entire body. As we discussed several times, the Neshama makes the eyes work. It makes the ears work. It makes the mouth work. It makes the brain work. It makes the heart work. Le'aleinu, you take the Neshama out, and none of the parts work. Put the Neshama in, all of a sudden everything is working. So the Neshama, the Rebbeinu Shalom fills the world, the Neshama fills the entire guf. Ma'akadosh Baruch Hu roa ve'eina nira, af Neshama roa ve'eina nira. It's the same way God sees but cannot be seen, so through the Neshama sees but cannot be seen. Ma'akadosh Baruch Hu zones kol olam kuloi, af Neshama zone es kol haguf. The same way that God sustains the whole world, so too the Neshama is the support system and the sustaining system for the whole guf. Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu tar, just as God is pure, af Neshama tahora, so too the Neshama is pure. Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu yoshev b'chad v'chadam, just like God, quote unquote, lives in an inner chamber. Af neshama yosheves b'chad v'chadam. So too the neshama exists in an inner chamber. So those are the 5 analogous points between neshama and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rav Friedland is pointing out this, that the Ramchal, the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends ha'aras panim to the neshama, is based on this analogy from the Gemara that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has these 5 specific qualities, and these 5 amongst perfection and all the other qualities, infinite qualities, but these particular 5 qualities HaKadosh Baruch Hu imbued the neshama with as well. Therefore, the neshama 5 given elements can be compared to the ha'aras panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, the Gemara says, Yavoy mi sheyesh bei chamisha devorim halolu, v'yishabach l'mi sheyesh bei chamisha devorim halolu. And that's why David wrote Baruch Nafshi 5 times. My soul praises God. My soul praises God. And he said this 5 times because it's appropriate that my neshama, which is analogous to God in 5 different ways, it should praise God in 5 different kapitel of Tehillim. Therefore, he said a Baruch Nafshi 5 times, because the analogy between the neshama and the quality of God, one of the 5 qualities is these 5 things the Gemara said, and therefore he wrote Baruch Nafshi 5 times. So in footnote 160, Rav Friedlander points out this Gemara that God's ha'oras panim is the neshama. The neshama has these 5 tremendous qualities that come directly from the Ribono Shel Olam of ha'oras panim. Where does hastaras panim come from? Okay, we're going to see that later in the Seif. Hastaras panim obviously comes from the Ribono Shel Olam. Is it a direct product, a byproduct? Where does evil come from in the world? And that we'll see later in the Sefer Mir Tashem.